Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Deb, and no, you are not imagining things or hallucinating. I am not Big Don. So I got the overwhelming joy of getting to start off the podcast because we don't have Don right now. Dear. Anyway, welcome to episode 233 of The Established Facts. And who do I have joining me other than Big Don, who is not here?
This is Josh.
Who's pretending to be Don?
No, just Josh.
Oh, just Josh. Okay, cool.
And I am Avital.
And the man behind the camera, our producer, our director, our creative voice from the sky.
I'm Lance.
Hi, Lance.
Hi, Lance. Thank you for running all of that electronics that I would probably be terrified to touch. So we are very grateful for your contribution.
You're welcome.
So we were sitting around talking literally right before the podcast started, and we got on to the subject of creativity because we have a couple of very creative minds with us today. Lance actually is writing the campaign. I'm calling it a campaign because it kind of feels like a campaign by now. It's not really a game anymore that he is running for us. That has now been called Accidental Brilliance. And Avital, incredibly creative with her writing, her story ideas, all of that. So I thought, we played around with the idea and we come up to what about discussing what gives us, inspires us creativity, gives us creative ideas, drives our creative juices, one of those things. So someone brought up the idea. We were again discussing. This all happens when you guys haven't seen us. It's very interesting.
It's an important element where we talk before we talk.
We do. We talk before we talk. So it would be a lot of work to record the talking before the talking, but it would be really entertaining. But about the idea of a muse, which is an old term. It's been around a long time, actually.
It has. And I see you looked up the definition.
I did. 'Cause I do that. I do that.
It's all Greek to me.
Ha.
Yes, it is. The definition is in Greek or Roman mythology, each of 9 goddesses, the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne. I'm sorry, I'm not Greek.
Mnemosyne, I
Sure.
believe.
She knows. Who preside over the arts and the sciences.
I believe
Thus,
it's pronounced not Hera.
Not Hera.
Not
Hera.
Hera.
No, not
Yeah.
Hera. That one I actually
One of
do know
the
that
other
much.
ones.
Yeah, I do know that much. Like, no. Thus where you get your word museum, for instance. So now you can, impress everyone at your next Scrabble game. Thank you, Lance. We appreciate that. The other one is a person or personified force who is the source of inspiration for a creative artist. We should all be called creative artists now. Whenever we do anything for gaming, we are no longer gamers. We are creative artists.
I'm going to go ahead and stay a gamer.
I'm going to drink my creative juices.
Okay, you do that.
No, I mean, nothing to that. My creativity, and I've commented on this before, especially when it comes to running role-playing games, is I usually need an module or adventure or something to kind of give me a baseline. But even then, I took Alderax, World's Largest City, and turned it into the Xenopolis campaign, or the destruction of Xenopolis as it ultimately became known. And for me, I love utilizing, and if that makes me, a thief, or
They've been called rogues.
rogues, yeah. I'm forgetting.
An efficient use of resources.
Sure. I'm forgetting the technical term right now, where you steal somebody. A plagiarize.
Plagiarism.
Oh,
yeah.
You're a plagiarist.
Yes, I am a plagiarist when it comes to that, but it's because I appreciate the art, the creativity that the original artist put into it, while also being able to utilize my own flexible creative muscles to package that up into a story that works for the players, at least as a game master. The same can be said about the players I have built, each of them having their either coming into the game with a
characters you
backstory.
built?
Yes.
Okay.
Characters.
Okay.
Coming into the story with a background or developing that background as the story comes along. It's amazing when a game master provides a wealth of knowledge and information for you to pull from in order to get ideas flowing. Like I've mentioned Cruffle, the Pathfinder Society character, which is not retiring.
Contrary to popular belief.
he is not only a rogue, but also a medic because he wants to be a helper.
Right.
And he's been in more situations where he needed to help more than steal. And that's a result of these different society campaigns. And I've really developed a fondness for this character as a result of it. So many times you hear about rogues that are like the sneaky, stabby, steal. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I have that capability. I use it when I need to, but it's more about helping those around me, finding the proper solution so that, so that none of us die. That's kind of the preference.
Rule number 1. That is
So
rule
what
number
you're really
one.
doing is you're just playing Josh that's also a rogue.
Yes. Yes. As someone who's played in many games with Cruffle, yes. That
And
is
3
correct.
foot tall.
And he's 3 foot tall. Correct. He is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's me.
he's what he always would want to be. Like the
yep.
short, funny. He still talks. He can diplomatize. It's not a word. He can talk his way out of just about anything. And then he accidentally kills things. He doesn't mean to. And then he heals them, treats wounds, and brings them back and apologizes.
I did. It was one
not
shot
kidding.
at an enemy and literally looked at the game master and went, he's not dead, is he? He goes, oh, normally he would be. I said, can he be dying one? Sure. I run over, kind of handcuff him and then bring him back. I'm like, sorry, dude. Didn't mean to kill you.
The rest of us are like, blink, okay. But it became a great story, our element later on when he can say completely sincerely, no, I really don't try to kill people. I'm like, I know, it's totally by accident. Really.
Hey, but it's creativity, right? That's another.
So you like to give someone, kind of starts with the seed and then you like to branch off from that.
Sure.
Is
That's
that
good
what I'm hearing you
that's
say?
a good summarization.
Okay. I don't know if that's a word either,
It
but
is.
sure.
That one is.
It is, okay. All right. Now, on another side of it, do we have anybody here who likes to start from scratch to begin the creative arc or process? Because I don't. I'm similar. I like to have a place to start, and then I will branch out from there.
It's funny. I just keep thinking because you said that the character was what Josh wanted to be, and then you described the character as short. And it's like, did Josh want to be short?
I think there are times he wouldn't mind because he gets asked to reach a lot of things because he's tall. I will say in
I
this
am
house.
tall.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
6'2". I'm not the 6'8"
Yeah.
Ray, but
No.
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But you're
that's
yeah,
good.
you're
That's
taller
good.
than just about anybody else other than Ray and Tony, who doesn't come by very much.
But well, let's see. I don't have a one specific muse, right? I don't know if anybody these days truly does. Someone I'm sure probably has. Everything comes from one place or one person or whatever, but
I haven't met him. But
lots
probably.
of places. The only game that I've run so far was I ran it at Fear the Con one year a while ago.
Now it's been
That was
4 years ago.
more. I feel
than
like
For almost 5.
or almost something like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
was 2017. It would have been almost 5.
I think it would have been the Fear the Con after the Nauticon before COVID.
That
well,
makes
COVID was
sense.
2020, so that would have been 2018.
So that was 5 years ago.
Almost. Okay.
Thanks to the producer.
Anyway,
Okay,
that's a lot of
yeah.
math.
Yeah.
Woo.
But and that my inspiration for that came from, so for a long time I have family in Missouri, and my aunt and uncle owned a house on the Lake of the Ozarks, which is, in case you don't know the Lake of the Ozarks, it was made by a dam being built and filling up kind of just like the valleys in between the hills and the mountains. So it's very like, it has the biggest shoreline, I think, of any lake in the world, simply because of how it's all like wiggly and
Fascinating.
and windy, right?
I knew
like
it was huge,
There's all
so-
sorts of there's little offshoots, but that's all
Yeah.
still considered part of the lake, right? And I've always thought, and anyone that looks at a map of it has thought, and you look down at the top-down map, it kind of looks like a dragon, but more like specifically the like Chinese dragon kind of, the ones that are all
Sure.
wiggly and
Yeah, lots of curves
go around,
and twists.
but-
and
and it is kind of labeled as like dragon and different things like that on like ads and things. It's not like a new thing, but I first thought I was maybe, I would write a story at some point, and I still might, about there, being an actual dragon. And so the idea of there somehow being an actual dragon. And so I started like researching information about the lake and how the lake was made. And I eventually even found one thing that I ended up using when I found that when they were making the dam, there's 12 spillways that like can be opened up to let the water like through, right?
Cool.
Into the river past the dam. But then there is actually a 13th spillway that is boarded up. And so I utilized that specifically in my
That's awesome.
in my game.
Yeah.
But I sort of pre-gened characters a little bit for it was in Quags, quick A game system. And I made all the names gender neutral because everybody can
Go whatever direction
it's like,
they're gonna go.
Alex and whatever.
Yep. Alex and Sean
And then I just
Pat.
left the
Did you say hat?
Pat.
Oh,
Pat.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't remember what all the names were. I have them somewhere,
Loki.
but yeah, Loki, exactly.
Always.
So then I had the characters, and then I said, okay, you all, look at your character and like you kind of think of what your character is, and because I kind of put like an archetype down. I was like, you all were like brought here for a vacation in this like shared rental vacation home. You tell me why.
Yep.
And but yeah, so my inspiration simply came from like being in the area and experiencing it, and I utilized like there's a spring that we would go to that's like on the lake, a cold spring.
Yeah.
And I used that, and there's like a park with, I think they call it like a castle or something, but it was just something that was built there or whatever. I use like things that I've actually like been to and visited myself in my game and my storytelling. And that's where those ideas came from.
That leads me in a spin-off question then, which, and I'd love to get Lance on this one too. Does experiencing something you've experienced in your life, like the Lake of the Ozarks in your case, or in my case, a game that I ran, the only game that I ran, which was the Slithering, and it was about basically, I don't want too many spoilers, but it's about a disease. It's a curse that's spreading, but it looks very much like a disease. Well, my experience as a physician, it gave me a lot of thought about where to go in my descriptions of things and how to handle leading it. Does experiencing something make it easier in the creative process? Because I'm a sensor, so I'm very much about my 5 senses. So if I start imagining, I'm trying to imagine colors and sounds and stuff. Is that the same for everyone? If you're imagining it, do you easily pull from experiences you've had and then go from there? Or is that too limiting for certain personalities or for your process?
I know for me, I've used this terminology before. I like to play the movie in my head.
Yeah.
Because, and that's a lot of how I remember the game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I've experienced that directly myself. It doesn't mean there's a case for anybody else, but watching Lord of the Rings, I obviously have not experienced the rolling hills of New Zealand, but it's very clear that that's the Shire. That's,
Yep.
What you got, Lance?
Yeah.
So yes and no. For some things, for example, we had a moment in a game where there was a military hazing, if you will, right? Do you remember the military hazing?
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember it very well.
Yes.
Indeed.
So when that happened, I was drawing from real life experience.
Right.
But when I started doing that, when I was relaying that, it got a bit intense. And so my thing was, okay, maybe I need to pull back on that and just start going a little bit more fantastical, get away from the actual and go a little bit more theoretical, go away from what I know so that I can lessen the impact that it's going on my players.
Gotcha.
So what you're saying is because I didn't like it, you didn't want to keep going with it.
Not necessarily you.
Yeah,
I don't
know.
think it was you. I'm
No.
pretty sure it was somebody else.
No,
at the
I
table.
I don't.
And
even
it
have
wasn't
a,
Avital because she's not in that game.
I don't have any problem sharing that story. I mean, they were hazing someone, and in character, I didn't know who said someone was, and I had a problem with the hazing. I was bullied in high school and in middle school, so oh, my son is great. So,
Is that
anyways,
DuckTales?
I don't know. I asked. Anyways,
He's singing if you
he's
can't hear
singing
him.
If you can't hear him. He was hazing somebody, and I didn't know who it was, and I literally tried to step in front of these guys. I healed this person, playing a cleric at the time, and after the game was over with, or even I think it was right after this thing was over with, Lance went to explain that was just kind of how it happens in the military and this and that, and I was like, doesn't mean I'm okay with it. It's the reason why I didn't go into the military. One of the many reasons, but I mean, nothing against the military. Thank you, military. Like, again, not a political statement. This is how I feel.
You don't think that it would have been a good fit for you?
No.
Okay.
But another thing I've done for, let's say, the vampire game. The vampire game that I played in was a live action role playing game, so a LARP. And that was in a city. So we have to use actual pieces of that city in that game. So you have to pull from real life for that. So if there's a statue there, you kind of have to know the history of the person that the statue is of, so you can kind of incorporate that in, right? So maybe the statue of Vigo or Vigo, whichever you prefer, he not only is this guy that was in Vincennes and was in the French and Indian War, but maybe he was also one of the first vampires in the Indiana territory, right?
Yeah.
And that's not just a statue, that's also the tomb where he was. I mean, you have to kind of take things that are real in your life, especially in a LARP, and kind of mold them in. But that's for a certain kind of game. If it's a game where it's theater of the mind, you don't have to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's for me specifically. Sometimes it's obviously from things I've actually experienced. Sometimes it's not. There are things that I think about that from reality that would be interesting to put in things like if I ever were to run a game or write a story that's like some post-apocalyptic in some way. There's a couple things that I think would be interesting to include. One of them is the star metal sword.
Ooh.
That I forget his name, but he is literally like asteroid metal. Had a sword made from it. It's somewhere in England. I think he's a writer or something. I have forgotten his name. And another, which I just found this out, is that there is a mummy at Earlham College in Indiana.
Okay.
Which
that isn't concerning at all to hear that. All right.
It's not. It's
Where else would he be?
Earlham College is
Egypt?
like little,
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
But there's a mummy
Oh, there
actually
is.
there. Just interesting things like that actually exist. Like,
But is there a daddy?
I see what he did. I see what you did there.
But yeah.
I'm trying to look this up because
but then for ideas for like things that I'm writing, the really funny thing is that a lot of my ideas have come from dreams. Dreams, your brain it takes things that either you've experienced or you have experienced in some way, whether it's reading or watching something or it's something you actually experienced in real life, and then your mind just mashes them together and like wiggles them up and pops something out. Obviously, I've never met a fae,
if you
right?
have,
That you know of.
that I know of. Exactly.
that you know of.
But, I had a dream where like there's one specific scene that really stuck out, about this guy and meeting a fairy in a forest, and that specific scene like was the seed for a whole story, like the most current story that I've been working on.
Nice.
And then there was another story that I have an extraordinarily rough draft finished of that came from a dream.
Like you wrote it on sandpaper or something?
Yes.
No, I mean, as it means a lot of work. As in, like, there are things like I need to elaborate on how this company works. You know, like some things like that.
Sounds like it sounds like a research project is what that sounds like, but okay.
And then there's just watching a movie, one of the Narnia movies actually, and I like to watch the credits for movies, you know, because people worked hard on the movies, and you know, I like to at least try and see some of their names.
Absolutely.
You know? And a name that I saw in the credits for one of the Narnia movies was Dimitri Frost.
Oh.
And I just thought that name was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, what could I do with this name? And then I turned that into a whole character, which was a like physical personification of the season of winter.
Nice.
Which then led to, okay, well then here's summer, and then there's going to be spring and fall, and like that's a start of a, you know, another different story idea that's been worked on, and they come from all over the place. The ideas, the inspiration, like
that was the name of somebody at the end of a movie, and you got inspiration from that, which is pretty awesome if you ask me.
Well, and Lance, with the Accidental Brilliance campaign you're running right now, a lot of your inspiration came from the Dungeons and Dragons TV series, correct?
Some of it, yes. There are things that I have borrowed, as you like to say. I borrowed it from that. I took inspiration from it, and I mean, there's something that I literally just stole. I stole Presto's hat, and quite literally Presto as well. I took him right out of that cartoon. And put him in my game. But that's because I liked that cartoon as a kid, and I've always wanted to play with those characters, and I hadn't had the opportunity to do that, so I just said, why not put him in my game? And I let my kid play with those characters, and my other players play with those characters.
Yes.
You're my kids. You're my kids in my game, right?
In a way.
But at the same time, like, I'm also taking inspiration from a lot of other sources that you'll find out about later if you haven't figured them out already. But that's just one place. Like, my wife took the game Candyland and made an entire one-shot out of that. Right? So you can borrow that from anywhere. What was I thinking of the other day? A children's book. There's a book series that's a choose-your-own-adventure type book called Wizards, Warriors, and You. And when my daughter was 4, I began telling her bedtime stories about a wizard and a warrior that worked for a king. And they would go out on adventures together. And she got to choose whether she was the wizard or the warrior. And if she was the wizard, she could choose 3 spells, any spells she wanted. And if she was the warrior, she could choose 3 weapons, any weapon she wanted. And they would go out and they would have an encounter. They would solve some kind of a problem, whether it be that there were trolls under a bridge.
There's trolls in the dungeon. Oh.
Or in the dungeon. Or where there was a mummy in a pyramid that had a magic book, and they needed to get the book from the mummies, right? The person she chose, the character she chose, and the choices she made told that story. So I borrowed a title from a book and characters from a book, and then allowed her to tell that story. So inspiration can come from just about anywhere. But as far as like what my muse is, internet.
All of it. Every single thing on the internet. That's his muse.
Fair.
Well, like really, like I'll make a character. If I'm going to make a role-playing character, the first thing I do is I'll go to DeviantArt or I'll go to Google Images, and I will search images of fantasy characters, and I'll find one that I really, really like, and then I'll grab onto that, and I'll say, ooh, that's a white-haired angel with 1 gold eye and 1 blue eye. I'm going to make that into a character. And I write that down. Okay, I've got an angel with 1 blue eye and 1 green eye. He wears a white suit with green, and maybe he likes elves, and that turns into a character. Then I can tell you more about that.
For our next episode.
I've told that story so many
It's true.
times.
It's an often used story.
It's good though.
It's a good story.
It's good.
You know, and I think there's the important element when it comes to utilizing your creativity is that it's got to be something. It's going to seem kind of cliche the way I say it, but it's got to be something you want to see, or at least want to see the outcome for.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even like the movie Godzilla versus Kong. It was just recently like that movie. They've
That's
done
a
that
thing?
before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a thing.
They've done two of them. There was one I want to say in the early 70s where they fought each other, and then they redid it with the current cast and everything. Anyone expecting it anything other than a giant monster versus giant monster, just don't go. It's
Nope.
just like the Expendables.
Nope, not worth your time.
Bunch of
Don't
action
go.
stars, being action stars. Don't expect some deep story.
Nope.
Was it clay or was it guys in rubber suits?
No, these new ones were CGI.
This is CGI.
But they're good CGI. I will say that they're good CGI. Not a deep story, but that's okay. It was funny watching King Kong come at Godzilla with a giant axe that was able to block his nuclear breath. It was a thing. But anyways,
What?
that type of story is something I want to see. Like, whatever differing opinions there might be about Batman v Superman. Eventually, somebody wanted to see those two fight each other, and they did for like 4 minutes. And then they moved on.
We
to
don't want
fighting
any more than
something
4
else.
minutes of this, but apparently that's all we get. Fair.
Anyways,
Martha.
Pretty much. Just yell Martha and you're covered in most all DC universe.
it's a lot.
is.
It's a lot. But regardless, it's the same. The Avengers. But what happened if these people would team up? And find that thing that you want to see happen or want to visualize, and be willing to bring that to the table.
That said, don't be afraid to abandon a character. If you are not having fun, or if you don't think you're adding to the story, or if the story is leaving you behind because you are trapped in something, don't have a problem with going to your storyteller, your dungeon master, your GM, your whatever, and saying, I don't think this is working. I want to keep playing. Can I make somebody new, or can I play a different character, or can we do something different? Because I had an idea when I made this person or this individual, and it's not going well. I made a gnome actually for the game that I started playing that angel character in, and he was very interested in finding his friend Tina, who was a fae. Tina Fey.
Yeah.
Tina the Fae.
Tina,
So
yeah.
I remember.
I kept trying to steer the story, like, "Hey, can we go find my friend Tina? That's all I want to do." And the story would not go in that direction.
Yeah.
Not my fault. The storyteller had a story to tell. I had a character who was single-minded, and that just didn't work. So I said, you know what? Next time we stop, I'm going to leave that character at the tavern, and I'll roll up a new character. And I talked with our storyteller. I think Don was telling the story at that time, and said, I'm just gonna leave this guy there and then roll up somebody new. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, that's fine. And the very next session, he wasn't there. So Derek, our friend Derek, took over, and he made up a whole dream sequence where I just fell out of the sky as this new angel character and literally started a brand new story. And it worked out really well for the whole party.
That was sounds like a very wise decision from everything, all the stories that I've heard.
Yeah. And like inspiration can come like from games. Like when we after we had finished that story, Lance, and then we were preparing for like the second story that was used to kind of related to those characters in that world, but then was the new.
This was the sister? No.
I'm
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That's the story of all of Palagain.
While we were, Lance and I like talked about, because at the end of that story, our two characters were the only ones that stayed, and didn't go to Earth.
Right.
Right. Because like my character still had family, and he like was supposed to. Now it was his job because the other people left. His job was now only to protect me. So then while we were working on the characters for the new story, like Lance gave me some information about like, some of the interactions. He's like, well, I was like, well, my character would have done this. He's like, oh, my character would have responded this way. And then he mentioned, you were the one that mentioned the thing about the like life tree or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had this theory that I read somewhere that elves aren't like animals. Elves came from seeds from a tree, right? They're plant-based creatures. So I threw that at Avital and said, well, what about this? What if this there's a tree, and the tree is what gives the elves like their home, and we'll even call it Home Tree. I'm pretty sure there's actually a book called Home Tree. Didn't mean to steal from that. But what if the elves are mystically tied to this tree, and the tree, because Palagain is falling apart, is also falling apart, and we need to heal that tree. And then we just kind of worked together on that.
Yeah, and so there was, I forget who was running it, some kind of short story competition. I didn't win, but I was like, I'm going to do a short story of the characters, my character from the first game and my character from the second game, who are sisters, Lance's character, and, you know, other characters, of them getting together and then having to go on that quest to heal the home tree.
Right.
And that is a short story that I have written,
Nice.
which I showed to an author friend of mine, and he's like, I have bad news for you. He's like, this is not a short story. He's like, this is at least a novelette, if not a novel. He's like, you need to work on this more, but like in a good way.
Here's good news, bad news.
And I mean, eventually, hopefully, I will go back to that. But
yeah, something else you need to finish.
you know, so that was
nice. That's really amazing,
you know,
though.
I have that story which needs to be expanded upon more, written at least, which also touched on some of the interactions between our two characters from the first game and how they became romantically intertwined.
Yes. So here's the rest of the story.
Yeah.
To be able to give the rest of the pieces to it. No,
It was kind of cool.
it's fascinating that I see that there's inspiration that comes from others' inspiration. To me, that kind of synergy, that if you will let yourself go into it, someone who's 100% introverted, it's not always easy to start that process. But if you allow that to happen, so for instance, now because I've been gaming for over 10 years, the game that Lance is running, Accidental Brilliance, I made a suggestion after we had a pretty intense session. We're going to call that an intense session, where Josh's character made a decision, and then there were other the follow-up to the decision that he made. And I'd send a text to Lance like, hey, this idea just came to me while I'm working. Like, I'm a doctor and I'm working, and this idea comes to me. And I'm like, what do you think of that idea? I said, I know it's kind of out there, but what if? And he loved the idea. So it was inspiration can apparently drop on you at work when you're, you know, trying to do other things, and all of a sudden this like light bulb moment of, hey, what if? And to be more specific, the what if was, what if my character and Josh's character, our classes were flipped? Because at that point I was a cleric and he was a paladin. Well, because of things that happened in the game, I was like, what if by a deific thing, like, because only a deity would be able to do this, I become the paladin and he becomes the cleric. As a consequence of this, now whether it stays forever or whether it's a temporary thing, we work it out eventually. And from that inspiration, I've been playing a paladin, and I really, really like playing a paladin. And I had never played a paladin before. Now they're called champions in Pathfinder. Thank you. But that character. And so now I want to build a full paladin champion, whatever I'm in, to play it from first play her. I think it's going to be female, her, all the way up, so that I can experience it from a low level. Because at this point, I think it was 6th or 7th when I became a paladin, I think. So that was an inspiration that came because someone else made a decision in a game, not my decision. And then as a result of that, I had an idea, well, what if this could happen with a story arc? And then as a result, I'm really fascinated in wanting to play this. So your inspiration can come from others' inspiration. Like I do think a spark can start, more of a fire in other people. Like, hey, are we just playing what if? Like the Marvel TV show, What If? Is that all we're really doing?
I mean, that's what it really is. It's all storytelling. And if the characters, the player characters that you guys are playing, you're also telling the story. If I'm just reading out of my notes,
right,
that's boring for everybody.
Yeah.
What's actually going on is that I'm giving you guys a frame. You're filling in the pages of the book. And when you guys need some direction, I'll throw something in your way, and then you guys will make another decision that continues the story.
So for a new gamer, what I heard you say, Lance, is that the new gamer should not let everything be driven by their game master, dungeon master, storyteller, because that could get boring. So a new gamer could get bored if they just let the game master drive the bus all the time?
That very much depends on the new gamer.
Okay. I figured that would get a response
Yeah.
from one of you two.
Well,
so,
because
like,
funny point. My first role playing game was in 2012 at Gen Con with
10 years ago.
Josh and others. So 10 years this year, and I was I am a shy, like socially kind of anxious person, and I'd never done anything like that before, and I was nervous about it, and so they're just like thought up this sort of, we're like, oh, what setting sci-fi, and then Derek just kind of
yeah,
thought something up,
as he
and-
does, because he's someone I
Right.
would love to talk to about inspiration, because good Lord, Palagain, but
Yeah, so
he's in Texas.
for somebody like me, as a beginning gamer, I very much wanted to be led.
Okay.
Like,
You wanted the
because
path.
I
You
was
wanted
not
that.
confident in playing the game, in what I wanted my character to do.
Gotcha.
Because I was always very nervous about like even making a character, like, is this character fitting in the world? Like, my first LARP character, which was the one I played for the longest time and I liked the most, was in the werewolf LARP, and all I did was build myself as a werewolf, and I gave her amnesia.
Okay.
Because I was like, I'm worried about fitting into this world that Avital does not know.
Right.
So if I just give my character amnesia, it's okay if I don't know things.
Right. You're in a safe
I can
place
learn it
to-
as I go on, type thing. So
Gotcha.
Right.
So, Josh, when you have someone new to your improv group, do you lead them, or is that something you just throw them in the middle of a scene and hope they swim? Because it's all the same thing, really. It's storytelling.
When it comes to improv, I tend to take the same approach that I like to take in a board game, which most board games at least have a mechanism for determining who the first player is. So, but I tend to take the approach of, okay, you're the new player. Let's move the first player token as far up so you get as many opportunities to see how it's done. But then the second half of that is you're kind of just going to get jump in. Now, in that, when it comes to role-playing games, it's another reason I tend to like to stay in the module adventure path type side of things, is because I can take the approach of, if you're new, okay, here's a pre-gen. If you're not new, you know what you're doing. I got a story that I'm trying to tell. So let's try and tell this story together, as we say, the collaborative storytelling element. So, yeah, improv is a little bit of both. See us do it a couple times and then get in there and do it. And I think that
See one,
helps.
do one, teach one. That's what they sometimes say in medicine. You watch a procedure, then you do the procedure with someone else watching you, so an expert, your faculty, whatever, and then see if you can find somebody else that you can talk through about it, teach somebody, whatever. Is that a good rule of gaming too?
It
Now,
is.
you watch somebody do it, and then you watch somebody do it, and then you get a nurse to do it, and then you try to do it.
I wish I could say that's how it always happens. Sometimes it happens that way. More often it's, you've already seen this once, right? Yeah, here, go ahead and get started. I'll check up on you in 10 minutes. Okay, cool. So, character, same idea? Do you get your character inspiration from movies? Do you get it from books? But it's the same idea. A character inspiration can come from anywhere.
Apparently, I like to play myself.
Okay, so you just play. Is that kind of like Nick Cage? Nick Cage just plays Nick Cage in all of the movies.
Sure. Little elements of myself come out a lot of the times when I play. And sometimes it is, for me, about exploring a part of myself that is maybe not always able to be explored.
Okay.
Like, especially Cruffle, as we mentioned, I'm a helper. I help out in a lot of different situations,
Yeah.
just in general in life. But then to be able to kind of take that up to the next level and help, like my wife would, as my wife being the doctor, I don't understand what it's like to be a doctor. But as Cruffle, I'm the medic. I can help out. I can treat wounds. I can throw some Band-Aids on and help out.
That's a lot of Band-Aids on some of those wounds. But I get a lot of my ideas because I think because I'm a sensor. If I see something on the screen, I'm like, oh, that would be really fun to play a character like that. But I see something or I hear something, a story someone else told, and I'll do that. I don't come out of it just on my own usually. I don't usually just get an inspiration that just kind of falls from the sky. Like, I want to create Reepicheep, but I want it to be my variant, but I really want to create a rat folk swashbuckler in the Pathfinder series, and I want it to be in some type of a swashbuckling, piratey, ocean-faring kind of game.
You
Because
want to make a 3 Musketeers?
I would be fine with that, but I need 2 others who are going to join me because, I mean, okay, all right, cool, sweet. But I loved the character Reepicheep. I loved it ever since Voyage of the Dawn Treader all the way through the rest of the series. And I'm like, oh, that would be... And then when I read they have a rat folk and they have a swashbuckler class, I was like, sold! But I haven't had a place where I can build it yet. The paladin that I want to create, the wizard that I'm playing now that I love playing, Minerva is me if I could read as much as I ever wanted to and didn't have to take care of 2 kids and didn't have a podcast and, church and friends and all this other social stuff that he makes me do. Minerva is who I would be, just studying and becoming, the expert in this thing, snarky as all get out. I don't know. Do you get your ideas from... Well, you play Cruffle. You just play you. So you just play you in all variations? Or do you
get
ideas?
A lot of that, yes.
Okay.
As I said, but I think Avital has some input too.
Yeah, please.
Well, the first character for tabletop role-playing, like a long thing, was in the Palagane one that Dawn was running. And I was nervous, because I hadn't done this before, but what helped me is that we actually did like rolling up backgrounds.
Yes.
Especially like as like a first character, like, okay, and then you off this list, which is why she was a lightweight alcoholic.
Yeah, because that's what you ended up rolling
that's
up.
what I ended up rolling.
Yeah.
She was afraid of bridges.
It's an in-depth background.
Jeff Bridges,
Yeah.
not the things over water.
Right, exactly. Not the bridge over troubled water.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like, say, the character that I started playing in my husband's game, which is in his world, that he has been... It really was still considered one long campaign, which ended up being like 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I started at like 13th level.
Whew.
So I was kind of like...
a lot that happened before that.
So what we did was, he's like, well, what sounds kind of fun? I was like, magic scares me because it's very complicated, especially starting at 13th level. So we're like, okay, some kind of fighter with weapons. And he's like, oh, well, we looked at some different things. And I was like, well, where are not a lot of people from? Maybe I could be from there and we could look at that. And so it was the Rumadon, which is the desert country. He's like, all right. So we ended up going with
It's okay.
it's not called Whirligig. The one that just goes around.
The
dervish. The dervish
Whirling
dancer.
dervish.
The dervish
Okay,
dancer.
dancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, dervish dancer, which has to start off with several levels of something else, which we end up being scout.
Yep.
And so after we built the character, we sat and I named it, and then we sat down and he's like, we're gonna write a little bit for each level, a little story. And so it was like me, and him with his guidance was like, okay, this happened, and this happened. He's like, sort of like what you did
Right.
to get to the next level
you
or
have
whatever,
some
right?
type of a background
There's like a little bit of this,
to get-
a little bit of this, right? So we did that, and then we moved on from there, actually playing the game and everything, and she ended up ascending to godhood, which was wild.
Yeah.
How did that?
Nice
Anyways.
promotion. All right.
But then the character I'm playing now, which is in the same world, but 1,000 years after the last campaign ended, because we like stopped the world from being destroyed.
Yeah. We did that in
1,000 years
Palagane
later.
a few times. Yeah.
And I was like, I decided I wanted to try magic since we were starting at first level.
Right.
But I was like, we're going to go magic light. So I was like, I want to try a bard.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'd already talked about being a descendant of my character and another character. So my bard, he's descended from my old character and another player character. And I on purpose was like, everybody's like, oh, this tragic backstory and that tragic backstory. I was like, tragic things will happen as and so I was like, he had a very simple, easy, chill. And I was right. Tragic things immediately happened, and he doesn't know if his parents are alive right now. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
And they were before
Okay.
the game started, type beat. But it's been fun. And it's given me different ways to be creative. He's a bard, and we're also like crewing a ship
Okay.
and like moving around and doing different things.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote a song. I mean, I don't know like music,
Yeah.
right? But I like can sing the song.
Okay.
Like I wrote a sea shanty for this one like encounter we had while on the ocean.
Nice.
And so like
I kind of want to write the
sung that
music
during
to it. I want to hear what this
during
is, and I want to
game,
start messing around on my keyboard and coming with the sea shanty.
yeah. So that
How's it
was
go?
a lot of fun. I don't remember the whole thing. I can do the first bit for you. 1 second.
Uh-oh.
All right. Forget the poems, forget the prose, and I'll sing you a tale of the burning rose, a ship whose fate we all would hate were it not for her crowning glory. From whence she came nobody knew, but her smile was sweet and her heart was true. She signed on to our charter fair, and her crew it grew in power. Glory, glory, she came out of the sea. Glory, glory, she's powerful as can be. And then there's more verses. And
That's so
That's
cool.
awesome.
That's so cool.
Glory literally did come out of the sea as we were going through the Dragon Isles, so she's actually a dragon. And that was where, well, a lot of people already knew she was a
Wait,
dragon.
boat
I'm
or
very
glory?
impressed by that.
Glo-
That's well done. Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
Thank you.
Yeah. So cool. Wow.
But yeah, there's more verses.
She writes music too, people.
Jason says we will eventually record it because, he's sound and a musician and
Yep.
eventually, but he's
I
been
have
super
a
busy lately.
$1,500 digital
to add.
piano behind Lance that would, needs to be used for something. But anyway,
But yeah,
it's under the blanket.
And but yeah,
Yeah.
Glory did actually climb out of the sea onto the ship while we were sailing through the Dragon Isles. So surprise, surprise, she's a dragon.
Nice.
And most of it knew it, but she ended up like saving us from this giant squid, and that's the song is like the story of that encounter, basically.
So
And I
cool.
said to her, at the end of the encounter, the NPC, I was like, Gloria, I was like, how do you want this to be memorialized? A sea shanty, a story this or whatever. And she's like, a sea shanty.
Sea shanty about me?
You know what? This tells me that you should get in touch with Tracy Hickman and maybe do some Skylanders.
What is?
Oh, you haven't heard about Sky Raiders yet, have
Sky
you?
Raiders,
Raiders.
yeah,
There
Sky
it is.
Raiders of the
All right, so
of Abarax.
of Abarax, yes.
I'm going to say it wrong.
So Sky Raiders of Abarax is Tracy and Laura's new campaign setting for D&D 5th edition.
Okay.
And it's airships and pirates.
kind of
and,
steampunky and
but
pirate.
they're also, there's a couple big things about it.
the only thing that's made me want to play D&D 5th Ed. Like,
Mm.
that's why I want to learn is because I kind of want to play in Sky Raiders.
But they're coming up with this whole new area, Abarax. They're kind of turning some of the rule system on its head by switching from races to ancestries. There's a lot of stuff, frankly, a lot of similarities to what Sky Raiders and Pathfinder 2nd Edition have done, which
Okay.
I love the fact that they're doing that. But the other side of it is, and this is absolutely where Jason would get involved, is they're wanting to utilize the Living Tome, which is these maps that they're going to offer and an augmented reality app where you can look at the map and they will be sending out new story elements that you can utilize your mobile device, whatever it is, to find out what's going on in the world of Abarax, as
That's
told
very
by Tracy
cool.
and Laura. Yes. They just finished their Kickstarter campaign 3-4 months ago, something along those lines. So hopefully, as more and more news comes about, I backed it, and
We're Kickstarters for it.
Yes, I did the Game Master level. I don't know. Did Lance? Did you jump on it? Okay, I cannot remember if Don did, but I know I did because I want to support Tracy, and I thought it was a cool way to possibly get 5th edition a little bit more under our belt for those of us that haven't played as much about it. Because I respect 5th edition, even if I am a Pathfinder player.
Now, the thing that is fun for me is listening to how you guys create your characters. As we know, I'm an old gamer. I mean, the white hair. Now that you can actually see it, there's a lot of white up there. I've been doing this a while, and when I first started, I played exactly how you started. I played a mute character. His name was Orion the Quiet, and he listened the entire time, so that when I was learning the game, I'll just do what they do. I'll roll what they roll and do what they do. If they roll initiative, okay, I'll roll initiative, and I will just follow them. I'm a quiet guy, and I just follow along the crowd. And then I started playing more of myself in the characters, and I introduced a character that was half me and half Louis from Interview with the Vampire. I was a vampire that didn't want to bite people. I would only eat from animals because I like people. So more of
not in that
myself,
way.
Josh, more of me in that character. I was a nice guy. Vampires versus werewolves. I would not fight a werewolf. I got punched right in the chest by a werewolf and took it. And almost died from it.
I'll bet you did.
But I got his respect, and that's the storyteller at the time said, that's where we're taking the story now.
Okay.
So I kind of took over that story.
Yeah.
But later on, I started playing all kinds of different characters. So as you progress, you less of yourself, more of the out there. So I played a character who had been a slave to a dragon, who had been a 20th level knight and a 20th level mage, and at one point there was a fight between the dragon that he was a slave to and another dragon, and got hit with a tail and knocked off of this mountain, somehow survived it, lived, got amnesia, went back to level 1. And that's where the game started. So
Oh, wow.
all this cosmic power, itty bitty living space.
Itty bitty living space.
Right? So the whole part of that character was learning to unlock that as I went. So I had godlike power, but I couldn't use it. So that. And then there was the drow vampire that ruled Barovia in Ravenloft because she killed Strahd. So I had another character that's, again, a female. Not me, but you learn to play outside those boxes, and you learn to play with the different things that you can, but you learn to have fun with it too. So if you're not comfortable, like Josh, I know you wouldn't be comfortable playing a female character. Just
Well,
it's something I know about you.
That's another story for another day, but
Oh no,
I am
wanna
no
hear that
longer
story.
comfortable.
okay. So you were at one point is what that story was. Okay.
Well, that story was we were saving a group of slaves, and that was what it took. It turned into more because, I was in a different place in my life. But the general story was that the male monk needed to transform into a female to win a wrestling contest to save women slavers. Slaves, not the slavers.
You didn't say the slavers, it was
yes,
the slaves.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
But I know that about you. I know that you
Yeah.
play a teddy bear, but
Yes.
you don't want to play a female character.
No, because for some reason I am okay with being fluffy and huggable.
And Deb, I don't think you would play a character that is purely evil. I mean,
No.
evil being not selfish, but out for vindictiveness. You wouldn't play an evil campaign.
I would not play it. No. I couldn't play it. I was saying I couldn't play it well, although saying playing an evil character well already sounds kind of bizarre. I wouldn't play it correctly, and I wouldn't stay there long enough because it's not a place that I can mentally go and stay there to really be in it. Now, could I play a character that is transitioning from evil into good, like is on a redemption arc? I think I could do that. Or a character who is ambivalent and is moving toward good. Like, I'm kind of struggling. Like, I see the bad choice, see the good choice, and is moving toward that. I think I could play that. It's not what I prefer to play. I would say I prefer to play good. I am better at playing chaotic good. Naturally, I lean toward lawful, which is why the paladin is like, yes, everything about this satisfies me. I have a code, I have a weapon, and I have a little bit of magic. Yes, let's do this thing. So that I'm all over that. But you are correct. I would
me
not.
as your dungeon master, I want to get in a situation where Josh has to play has to do something that is completely opposite of who he is, and you have to do something that is completely opposite of who you are, just to see how you would react in that moment. Not necessarily keep you there, but for example, put Josh in a situation where he has to kill someone, and then see what it goes. Or put you in a situation where the rules have to be broken. Right? That's something I would do for you, because you are adamant about, well, this is what the rule is. The rule must be followed. Taking you out of that, the role playing and taking you into the realm of the possible.
And that's also creativity. A huge arc, which is requires some courage, and that requires courage on both sides, both as the player and the GM. And that requires a high level of trust. That is not a place to go for a new player, in my opinion, and that's also not a place for a new GM to go. I think I could have gone there with Derek. I think I did, actually. I think in one of our games, the one where our dragons all died and we had to put ourselves to save, we had to die, and the hardest part for that moment was that when those in the Dragon Rider game where the dragons were dying, that the character Elisheva that I was playing could not save her dragon. Her instinct was all about, I have to do something to save, but to for the greater good, I can't. I have to let this my companion for, at that point, 18 levels. I think we were at that point, or were we 20th? We were a team, and I had to watch her die in that game for the story to be told correctly. And so Derek did push that of, what are you going to do? Like, if you save the dragon, the world is going to fall apart. So you can't save your companion of this long, and the dragon in the process is trying to save me. Because I'm taking the same damage. We're taking different damage, but we're both being seriously damaged in all this process. The dragon's trying to escape to save me. I want to escape to save the dragon. Neither one of us can save each other, and neither one of us wants to save ourselves. But will you sacrifice the world to save the other? He knew this about me. I was in medical school at that point. It wasn't at the beginning of residency. He knew that this was a driving point of something deep in my character that needed to be played out. And so to this day, I will never forget that, because I trusted him enough to play the game and not pull out, because that would have been easy to pull out. Like, I can't do this anymore. This is too real. This is too much. He could have also pulled back and not been as seriously creative, as seriously pushing as he did. But then we would have lost a fantastic story. I don't know because you were in the game too. Avi was not at that point, but you were in a similar boat. The trust factor between a GM and a player to let that creativity flow is a real thing.
It is, and it's extremely important.
Yeah.
The phrase that has come to mind here is creativity should be that of limitless possibilities. But on the same note, you have to understand your limits. There are times where you're going to be pushed to that limit. You got to be okay with it. It's also brings us back to the point we've mentioned before, how important it is to have your session zero and understand there are limits that I'm just not crossing. Don't even bring it up. I don't want to deal with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to process the ones that are just next to that, right?
Yeah. You get close. And sometimes brushing that can teach you some things about yourself. It can teach you some things about your other players that you're playing with. If you can have a moment like that in the middle of a game, and it's not just your closing moment, but in the middle of a game, it can make the rest of the game very, very much richer. Because, and I think I can say that that's happened probably to us in Accidental Brilliance, is we've gone through enough kind of rough patches, and Lance can speak up because he's the GM to the game, but enough rough patches. Yeah. Enough rough patches, and then working through with our different creative processes, that we're in a much different place as the way our team plays now than we play in the first level. At least I dearly hope so, because okay, he's at least nodding his head to that. Avital, I'm sure you probably had something to say for a couple minutes now.
I was listening to your stories, but what was the question? Was there a question? Sorry.
I think we were discussing about the trust between a GM and the player to be able to let creativity flow, and that's a hard. You pointed out before that when you were a new player, you were not confident in your own understanding of the game or your own process, and honestly, depending on the person, you may not have been comfortable if you didn't know Derek that well, or if you didn't, trusting your GM and leading me through this process. If you don't know him, speaking as an introvert, that'd be a hard thing for me to do. But you're different personality. But that trust with the GM, does that help you?
I mean, yeah, it does. But even still, I get anxious even in in-game situations, and my husband is running the game.
Okay.
That's just me.
Right.
Like, and in, say, the first Pallegane, Don was running, and even if I hadn't known him that long, he's a very welcoming guy. I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
It was your house. You know what I mean?
Right.
I get anxious even if I'm in comfortable situations.
Yeah.
It just happens, but
Right.
I push through it, and then after something where I have to talk and be like the focal point of conversation, I'm sitting there like my hands are shaky and like my heart is racing, and like it still happens, but it's good, and it's good storytelling, so
Yes,
it works out.
it does. So
Well, this has been fun.
there was a lot that went away. I
Yeah.
wasn't totally sure it would go, but that's what happens when Don's not here to keep us back on track.
True.
Did we have a versus topic?
No.
We jumped right in. No, we just jumped right in.
With this, it would have been hard to, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we would have versus, but so I think we can summarize this to say that there's probably more creative ideas that we would have about creative ideas in gaming when we'd have even more heads around this. So I don't know. I feel like we could revisit this again with a
probably.
different
I'm
combination
sure,
of
I'm
heads.
sure.
There are other people. Yeah, there are other people that can bring inputs on. It's like creativity is the Keith Lee of our imagination. Sorry, it's a pro wrestling reference for those of you who don't know. Keith Lee is limitless.
So I think
Anyways,
the real question at this point is, do we have an established fact?
I only came up with one, so I will give you my
That's
idea.
fine.
And if you guys had another idea for one, we will
I
go
don't.
with it.
well, first on episode 232.
Yes.
Yes, 232.
232.
We established that the rule number 1 to the Deck of Secrets is we don't talk about the Deck of Secrets.
Correct. That is correct. So for this episode, 233 of the Established Facts, I would like to establish that we all need to visit the Mummy at Earlham College for new and exciting gaming ideas.
Sure.
And don't forget to drink your creative juices.
And don't forget your creative juices.
Not sponsored by Monster yet.
Nope. Although we're open to possibilities.
Label out.
Label out.
Thank you all for joining us on this episode, and we will check you later. Bye.
Bye.